WarsawJS.
So this will be talk about a performance monitoring tool, Reassure. Let's start with me. I'm Łukasz. I'm a team leader and mentor and software developer at Callstack. I'm also a host at several podcasts, couple of podcasts, too. The React Native Show podcast by Callstack and also the WarsawJS News. And I'm a frequent participant of WarsawJS. I'm an infrequent speaker, and I was a trainer just this one time. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Who are we as a Callstack? We are React and React Native masters. We are a world-class React Native consultancy, and we have clients from all around the globe that we are supporting them with their complex problems, and we provide some solutions for them. We are also a Meta React Native partner. We organize React Native EU conference in Wrocław, and we are also open source contributors in React and React Native space. Let's jump into the talk, and this talk will be about confidence. So I want you to all close your eyes and imagine that you are a software development leader. Maybe you are team leader at some product company, and you take pride in the product that you're making. Your code is flawless, and you know your entire product ins and outs. And most importantly, you trust your code. But do you trust others with your code? You can open your eyes now and look at the slide here. I don't know if you can see it, but this is like 200 lines component. It's not long, but it is very generic. It is used on like thousands of screens in your application and maybe in other applications as well. Probably you cannot see. There are a lot of ifs, there are a lot of if statements. And if you wrote this, how would you feel if someone wanted to change it? So again, imagine that you are the senior developer. You wake up one morning, it's like 12 o'clock. You arrive at the office, and you find this PR saying, I felt that this component was due for some refactoring, so enjoy reviewing it. And again, this screen is used in 161 screens inside your application. So you look at the changes, they don't seem too intrusive, all checks out, and maybe even you wanted the changes to happen. But do you have confidence in this like intern developer, junior developer, probably made the changes at 5 a.m. in the morning, something like that? So do you have the confidence? Sure. If you have tests in your application and all very important and real screen in this application, all 161 of them, says that they're fine with the change, you agree with the change. And this is nothing new, because this is just like a project development lifecycle. We all know this. So you add some new features, you add tests to the features, you move the product to QA stage, and then if all checks out, you release. When you find a bug, you identify the root cause, you add some more tests, and then again, you QA, you ship the fix, all checks out. But I want you to imagine that you are an expert developer, not a senior, but expert developer in world-class consultancy, React Native consultancy. And your clients hired you to do some performance investigations, some performance improvements in their application. And the application is used on dozens of markets and by millions of users. So you do it. You squeeze out the performance of this application. You memoize the components wherever it's necessary. You undo memoization whenever it's not necessary. And again, you take pride in the progress that you're making. Your code is, again, flawless. And most importantly, you trust your code. but do you trust others with your code as well? So I need a little disclaimer here. I showed this previous slide, this one, to Maciek, who is actually on the slide, and I asked him what he thought. And he told me that I shouldn't really talk about trust here. Yeah, that's the disclaimer. He told me that I shouldn't really talk about trust here because, like, I'm gonna read this. It's really easy to unintentionally break performance when you're focusing on writing new code. Whether you are senior or not senior, that doesn't really matter. And spotting those performance regression without external tool has been hard historically. So the question really should be not if you trust others with your code, but do you trust that the changes you do to your code while writing features daily are not impacting performance in a bad way? So thank you, Maciej, for ruining my slide. I think the previous one was better, but yeah. So yeah, back to our regular program. It's all about confidence, if you trust others or not. Because if there only was something that would allow us to catch performance regression in a similar manner that we can catch regular bugs and regressions, we'll all be good. So Maciej searched, and he searched, and he didn't find anything. So Maciej is actually a maintainer of React Native testing library, and he created Reassure. So Reassure is performance monitoring tool. You can find more in this like QR code. And the story that I just told you is real. We have a client, Entain. Entain is a betting company. They have, I don't know, many applications. They're on 30-something countries, and they have millions of users. They came to us they wanted us to fix their performance, fix their application in terms of performance. So yeah, we figured it out. Maciej figured it out. So the challenge was to create something that you could write tests in using familiar test syntax. And it was created by Maciej. You can find him here. So right now, I want to show you how it works, how you can use it. So inside my repository here, thank you so much. Inside my repository here, I have this slow list component. And this slow list component takes some prop from the parent count. It creates a new data array, and it just maps over this data array, and it renders a slow list item. And this slow list item uses this like weird pattern inside that whenever I give it a title, it will use effect based on this title, and it will just uppercase the title and display. So if I wanted to make some changes to that application, I want to know if the changes I'm making are correct, if I'm moving in the right direction. So what I can do is I can yarn reassure baseline. If I didn't use it before, I do the baseline so that reassure creates a baseline measurement to check all my future improvements against this baseline. So I write this. And what it does, it actually runs the performance test that I wrote, and I will show you in a minute. Yeah, it is quite long. It wasn't like that when I tried it at home. So let's go to the tests that I'm making. Okay, it actually went through. So in this screen, you can see that it was running a performance test against baseline main. That's the commit hash that I'm doing this on. I have two tests, the async component performance test and slow list performance test. Both tests passed, and it wrote a baseline to this performance JSON file. So if I go here and I look at my slow list, there is a performance test here that is just awaits a measure performance that I imported from Reassure. So let's look what it does inside this measure performance. So the measure performance is actually pretty simple. What it actually does is it renders from testing library. It renders the React profiler, which is not new. This was around for years now, and it collects the results for me. And when it runs, it will create a folder in my project called Reassure, and that's my baseline measurement. It's a simple JSON with the results from React profiler. Yeah. So let's say I want to fix some performance in this application, and I know that this is a weird pattern, so I will just get rid of this, and I will just use a title, and I'm gonna uppercase this like just in my JSX to uppercase. And so, okay, I have this. I want to know how much it helped my code. So I come back to my terminal. And by the way, you can use it in the pipeline as well, but terminal just gives you this faster feedback loop. And but we encourage you to connect this to your local development, but also to connect it to your pipeline. So I run Reassure without a baseline now. And what it will do is it will run the performance tests again, and then it will compare it to my baseline. So I can see there are several different sections of this. So I'm comparing the same commit. I have a section significant changes. I did it. Maciej is using some pretty serious math to actually determine what is significant change and what is meaningless change. And it shows us that we have a significant change in our async component that I didn't show you yet, but I'm gonna. And it dropped in render time from 72 to 63 milliseconds. And the render count dropped from 7 to 6. So that's like -1, -14% performance increase. And our slowest component that we actually changed dropped very significantly from 23 milliseconds to 13 milliseconds in render time and 2 to 1 in render counts. So this is a very significant performance improvement. Yeah, so that's how it looks when I make the change in a good direction. So let's see what happens if I write this current performance measurement as my baseline, and I will undo my good changes from slow list component. So yeah, I have a new baseline now, and I can do this. Let's say I'm this again, this intern developer, and I really like this new pattern that I learned in the internet. Someone told me that this is great. This is how you should do it. Yeah, let's see. I create a PR. This runs on my pipeline on my CI, and everyone that checks my PR that does a code review for me can see that I significantly decreased performance of those two components. So that's not good. I'm not gonna merge this change. So
3
yeah.
minutes left.
Oh, okay. Sure. I will not show you then the async component improvements. You can find this exact example in some documentation. So back to the story, we have this decrease in our application, and we don't want that. So I'm removing this weird pattern from my component, and I'm gonna just to uppercase it in JSX. Okay, so if I run again my Reassure, it should compare. There should be no changes, right? Because my baseline has this small improvement already counted in. So I can see that there are no significant changes to my render duration, but there are some meaningless changes to my render duration. So I'm going to talk about more about this in the end of this talk, but you cannot expect that your code will run the same like millisecond time each time you run it. There are some variables there, so we have to be careful what is meaningless here. And like the render counts are pretty obvious; those should not change, but the time it takes to render some component, this will fluctuate. So there are actually some cool tricks that they did, Maciej and others that created Reassure did, to actually count if something is significant versus if something is not significant. So that's my new baseline. And the test that I showed you is pretty simple. This is just await measure performance. I'm going to show you another test right now that is more complicated. It adds more to the table that just measuring rendering times. So I have this other component. It's called async component, and so it has a button here. It has a count here, and then it renders my slow list. My slow list count doesn't depend on the count here, but it will re-render each time I change the state here because it's just direct child, so it's gonna re-render. I have this set timeout here to mock some asynchronous calls or something like that. So just you don't have to know what's going on. This is a set count. This is a use state hook, and I'm increasing the counter while pressing this press equal component. Okay, so how do I write a test to check for that scenario? I can use scenario. So I again await my measure performance, but what Reassure allows me to do is to pass a scenario to my measure performance. So my scenario is that I find my button and I just press it several times. That's all. And again, if you go into measure performance, you can see that there are options here. And as options, you can provide runs, so how many times you want it to run, some wrappers, and scenario. Okay, so if I were to change this component, and I have this actually commented here, the change in the right direction, I could just memoize the child here. I can say, don't render me this list like that. Just use the latest reference that useMemo provided. So let's go to Reassure again. And yeah, my baseline is this small change to slow list. Let's see how this will do. And I can see that my async component actually dropped very significantly in render time from 61 to 15. Render count didn't change, but yeah, that is great improvement. I can come back to my client. I can go back to my client and say, give me some raise or something. This is very good. Again, meaningless improvement in slow list. Render time. This actually increased, but we don't care about that. That was demo. I think it went good. Actually, I had a video. Thank you. Thank you so much. Whoa. Actually, I had a video if the demo didn't went so well, but it did, so I'm not gonna play it. And again, so if you were to connect this tool to your CI, in your CI, in your PRs, you could see something like that: performance comparison tests, blah, blah, blah. And we have this, again, the same sections. significant changes, insignificant changes, meaningless changes, render counts, stuff like that. So based on that, you can either allow this PR to go into your master branch or something or not. Like I said, there are some challenges when creating a performance benchmark. So before Reassure, what I seen in the project that I've been was to either use a stopwatch and actually use the application and see on each screens how it performs after the changes, or I actually saw other examples as well. But this is very not precise. It's not very precise. So the same story is when you run your application in Node in like React Native testing library. The stability of this and flakiness, you have to take it into account. So what they actually did, Michał, Maciej, and other folks at Callstack, they run Node with some flags turned on so that it doesn't use garbage collection. They manually control garbage collection. So you are sure that garbage collector is not kicking in while you are performing some task. I think they are disabling just-in-time compilation as well. And the Reassure runs your tests default 10 times. So, and from this 10-time run, they will take some average, some mean, I don't know, some math thingies, right? Yes, I'm finishing. Yeah, they're doing all of this. If you want to find out more about Reassure, you can treat this talk as a middle point. I actually created a podcast with Maciej and with Michał when we discussed Reassure for like an hour and some minutes in detail, so you can get to know Reassure firsthand from creator of Reassure. And actually, Michał Pierzchała, who is our head of technology, he gave a talk about Reassure, which is high-level overview on app.js conference. The link is here. And yes, thank you so much for listening to this talk. You can find out more in this QR code. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. And thank you for creating this. You guys are doing a stellar job.
I didn't, but I'm gonna tell them that you said.
And I'm definitely going to check this out, as I am the person who is a team leader and is maintaining a React Native app in production. And in my use case, like performance correlates to real money of customers. So I'm definitely gonna be checking it out. My question is, if I understand correctly, this doesn't run on the device or in the simulator. It's just
this is like your regular testing library test. It runs on Node.
And did you guys like check how well the these Node results correlate with the actual renders on a device?
Oh yeah. So this is actually a topic that I asked about in the podcast. So this is meaningless, because what we want to do is we want to take the baseline measurement and compare it to current measurement. This is not supposed to emulate real user on real device, because you can have like tens of Android phones with very different test results. So what we want to do is we want to take the same node machine and the same node machine and compare the apples to apples. So actually, when you pipe it to your pipeline, to your CI, the baseline that you took a week ago can be different machine than the current measurements that you are doing right now. So what we do in our script, in our CI, is we run the baseline again the same time, right before we do the current measurements. So we are sure that you are doing this on the same machine.
So that's right, but the real thing I'm interested in is like when Reassure tells me that nothing has changed in Reassure tests, how sure can I be that nothing has gone wrong with performance on an actual device?
So there are different tools to do that on the actual user device. You can use like Firebase, stuff like that. What is different in approach in these two approaches is that we give you a fast feedback loop, but not a real thing. This is just a proxy of a real thing. What you get from tools like Firebase or others is that you get real results on real devices, and you know which devices perform how, but you have to wait for this result. So your PR has actually have to actually go into master, go into the production, and you have to wait a few days for the results to aggregate, and only then you can see your changes. So what Maciej is actually proposing is that you use both.
I like the stopwatch solution. Stopwatch, 2 different
This
devices.
Is terrible.
For me, that's perfect. This just makes sense. Anyone else have any questions for Łukasz about this Reassure? Seems like an amazing tool to me. Here you go.
New company, do you have any acceptance criteria for this performance test when you make releases?
Well, this is very relative to your needs. So we actually don't fail the test if the results are rubbish, if you decreased your application performance 10 times, because this is not the tool to tell you that you didn't want this. You could actually write some meaningful changes to your code that dropped in performance, but this is what your client wants. So this is not a 01 if statement. This is a relative measure to give you some knowledge as a PR reviewer, as a coder, to know what your code is doing. This is not fail or pass kind of thing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was amazing. Appreciate it.